Boa tarde a todos e todas. Good afternoon, everybody here in Unicamp, in internet. Let's start. Two of the speakers are late, but they are coming. Let's start. First of all, I would like to thanks for the opportunity here to be using the space of the Institute of Economic of Unicamp for one more session of our Coffee with the Research. Is an activity that we realize here periodically, and Café com Pesquisa. And today we have some special speakers here, and I will give the word for Professor Bruno De Conte, our professor here, to present our colleague from South Africa, and after we start with our speakers. Thank you.
Great. So good afternoon, everyone. Good evening for those who are following us from South Africa. And I was not supposed to be in this session, but it's a pleasure to be here to introduce my dear friend, Professor Zamo, as we name him. Professor Zamo Kule Mbandwa. He is a professor at the Durban University of Technology in South Africa at the Department of Public Management and Economics. And he's a specialist precisely in social policies. And he's here at the University of Campinas for a bit more than 1 month. So I just want to draw your attention, especially the students, that you have the opportunity of interacting with him during this whole month if you want. I'm very thankful for Professor Zamo for coming here. The Durban University of Technology is one of the most important partners of this school, of this Institute of Economics, on studies related to the BRICS. They have a very interesting BRICS research center. Next week, as one example, we are organizing together a winter school related to the BRICS together with the Durban University of Technology. Some of Zamo's colleagues, they are coming as well. And it's a great pleasure for us to have you here today with us. He's staying until September the 3rd, and he's totally open to receive you, students and scholars, for personal conversations, bilateral conversations as well, if you want. He's staying at my office 73, if you want, or you can reach him through email. You can talk to him later as well. So thanks a lot, Professor Zamo. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, colleagues.
I can skip.
Okay, no, it's fine. I can even use this one or that one. It's up to you. You want me to sit there?
No, okay. However you want.
Okay. Okay.
You just don't need to know.
Okay. Thank you.
Share for those who are online. You can start speaking.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you very much, Prof. Bruno and Prof. The discussant here, Prof. Marcelo. And thanks to everybody who is here today. I really appreciate your presence here. Unfortunately, I can't speak Portuguese. And I know I need to speak very soft so that everybody will be able to receive my message across, especially because English here is not the language that is widely spoken. So I need to be very cautious. As I've been introduced by colleagues here, my name is Zamo Kule. I'm coming from the Durban University of Technology in South Africa. I will not be the only one talking with you here today. I have other colleagues who are coming, very distinguished professors as they have been mentioned already, who are also playing a very significant role in in the government of Brazil. So they will be joining us shortly. We will be talking about one and the same topic, all of us, which we think is very, very important to talk about, which is the issue of the social justice and income transfer. This topic is the topic that is very dominant in the society, in our global community. So this topic does not only affect one country, but it affects all the countries in the world. So that is why we decided to choose this topic, or to talk about this topic. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, thank you. Now, social justice and income transfer are interconnected concepts focused on promoting fairness and equity. So these concepts are interconnected. The issue of economy and the issue of social justice can never be separated. So it's very important to understand that these concepts work together to ensure that our society live in a harmonious situation or condition where everybody have access to resources or have access to money for their livelihood. And not only that, we have, as a global community, we have a responsibility to make sure that all individuals have equal rights. So no one must have their rights infringed by others. So we need to ensure that we all have equal rights, equal opportunities, without being subjected to your economic conditions or your economic situation. At this point, the global community is influenced by the financial muscle. If you have money, your living conditions become much, much better compared to those who do not have money. So we have collectively that responsibility to make sure that we are able to live a better life, all of us, and try to transfer the economy. That's why our topic is about social justice and economic transfer. So we need to do that by addressing the disparities that are caused by economic differences or economic instability, issues of social justice, whereby some communities are not given the same priority as others, and also the political inequalities. So we need to ensure that everybody within the society is not disadvantaged based on their political preferences or their political conditions. Now, the income transfer become the responsibility of the government. As we go along, you will see how the government must ensure that the economic transfer becomes the sole responsibility of government, and also to make sure that there are systems in place that are able to transfer the economy in a fairly distributed manner without disadvantaging a specific or a certain community or a certain population. Here I have the figure that speaks to a very fundamental issue that that's influenced the social justice and the global economy. In front of you, there is what you call top 20 countries. When I'm saying top 20 countries, I'm referring to the entire world, or all countries in the world, not just a few continents. All the continents, all the countries in the world, these are the top 20 countries with the highest income disparities. And to qualify the statement, I present to you the percentage of the total income held by 10% wealthiest individuals. So in other words, all these countries have about the economy being controlled by the 10% of the entire population. So for example, here in Brazil, we have more than 200 million citizens in terms of the population, but the economy of the country is controlled by 10% of the population. And these are the percentage that are in front of you, which says that in South Africa, about 65.4% of the total income is held by 10% of the population. So in other words, the 10% of the people in South Africa who are wealthy are controlling about 65.4% of the entire economy of the country. And the list goes on. I've highlighted South Africa and Brazil, but these are the countries where there is information that speaks to what is the percentage of economy that is controlled by the 10% that I'm talking about. So here in Brazil, you have about 58.3% of the economy that is being controlled by the 10% of people who are wealthiest people in the country. So the rest of us are sharing the other percentage, which is 42%. So the rest of the people in the country are sharing the remainder of the percentage in the total economy of the country, while just 10% is controlling 58.3% of the economy. So this is how bad it is when it comes to the social justice and the economic transfer. Now, remember earlier on, I spoke about the role of government to transfer the economy. Now, I'm just going to talk about specific tools now that can be used by all the governments, not just the top 20 countries that I've mentioned, but by the entire governments globally to transfer the economy from the rich people to the citizens, to the entire citizens of the country. They can use what you call taxes, government spending. They can use what you call the fiscal policy. And maybe because some of the students here are economics students, so they will be familiar with all these terms. Now, the government have a responsibility to ensure that those who are rich are taxed enough for the government to have money, and the government must use that money to balance the economy and transfer the money to those who are struggling in terms of various social benefits that are introduced by various governments to make sure that the economy is equally distributed to the citizens or to the population of the country. There's another scholar which speaks a lot about this topic, which is Francis. Francis emphasized that after years of relative neglect, economic inequality has now become a central issue for the global policy. So the economic imbalances is the major problem for the global community. It's not only affecting countries in South America, or countries in Africa, or countries in Europe for that matter. All countries in the global community are affected by issues of inequality, especially the economic inequality. As you know, we have different types of global communities. We have developed countries, developing countries, and underdeveloped countries. So the issue of the economic imbalances affects countries based on the economic situation or economic condition of those countries. However, in both contexts, it is also very important to understand that the developing countries or the underdeveloped countries have much responsibilities to reduce poverty, because poverty is the main cause of economic imbalances in various communities. Now we have what you call direct income distribution, which involves the wealthy and providing transfer to the purest segments of society as a straightforward means. So in other words, the government must make sure that those who are rich are able to share their economy with those who are not rich. Even though tax becomes the major tool that is being used by many governments, but tax should not be the only tool that is being used. Government must make sure that those who are rich are able to be involved in social transfer activities, such as making sure that those who are rich are able to fund non-government organizations, are able to fund students, those who are at universities or higher education sector, but they are not able to fund for their education. Those who are rich must be compelled to fund those who are not able to support themselves through education or through their livelihoods. These measures are very important because they will be able to benefit the impoverished populations. In other words, those who might have dreams, or who might even have business ideas, or who might even be bright students, but they are not able to fund for their education because they don't have enough resources, they don't have enough funds. So the government have a responsibility to transfer the economy to such individuals. However, in many cases, the scale of such interventions is insufficient, because even those who are in government, they also have a dream of becoming rich. They also have a dream of becoming the main players in the economy rather than representing the poor of the poorest in the communities. So those are the challenges that we have to balance the global economy. Now, on average, taxes on personal income and cash benefits to the poor constitute nearly 10 times less of the GDP. So in other words, the developing countries and developed countries cannot be compared when it comes to the GDP, because there's a huge difference, which is caused by the economic conditions globally. Now, what becomes more problematic is that developing countries rely mainly on tax. And these taxes are not just balance the national economy, but these taxes are also funding the politicians, they are funding government employees, they are funding a lot of activities in government. So it is very difficult for developing countries to have resources for everybody. Hence, I said earlier on, there must be very strict policies when it comes to the economic transfer to balance the economy by ensuring that those who are rich are able to share their economy or their riches without having to be subjected to do so, but they must be forced to do that by the government. Even though taxes deemed regressive because the tax consumption or the money that is coming from tax is not enough and cannot be able to eradicate the poverty. in the manner that we might want it to be. So there is a problem. And again, the household consumption patterns in direct taxes may inadvertently deepen poverty. Why am I saying that the tax might even inadvertently deepen the poverty? Is because if you are employed, you are also subjected to pay tax. It doesn't mean that because you are working, regardless of your economic condition, even if you are poor, if you are employed, you must pay tax. So it actually gives you a situation where even if you don't have money, but you still have to pay tax. Targeted income transfers are generally more effective and cost efficient than subsidies in reaching the truly needy. So in other words, the income transfer will be more effective than using the tax or the tax money. Now, what is it that we need to talk about, and what is it that we need to do as the community, especially community in the institution of higher learning, such as this one, where there are different ideas, different plans on how can we balance the economy. We need to look at how the inequality have declined in some countries and how they were able to deal with that and what can be done to ensure that there is a decline in the inequality and there is a balance in the economy. One of the good scholar, Komatsu, in 2016, wrote about the notable decline in inequality in Brazil around the turn of the century. So even though there is a high inequalities, as we have seen the graph that I've shared with you earlier on about the 20 top countries, but Brazil is not where it used to be in the past. So in other words, there is a paradigm shift in terms of the economic inequalities over the last century. This might have been influenced by a number of initiatives that have been made by the government. One of the most important initiatives that is seen to be the effective one globally, not in Brazil precisely, is the issue of the minimum wage laws. Many countries have resorted to have a look at how the minimum wage can be able to be used as a tool to make sure that people are not exploited or employees are not exploited by the government. Now, there are key social justice issues, which I think, in addition to what I spoke about, should be regarded as the most prominent sins of the society or against the society. These issues include economic disparities, economic imbalances. Mostly globally in the society, you are respected on the basis of how much money you have in your bank account, what is your standard of living, what is it that you have, what are your assets, before you can even be respected. You are not just respected for being a human being, but the economy have a huge factor on how people are treating you, which become a very big problem. And also the gender inequality, whereby in some countries, people are remunerated on the basis of their gender, which become a very major problem in the workplace. And also the racial inequalities. Some countries consider this as the tool that is being used to distribute the economy. And also the disability. Some countries do not have policies of people who are living with disability in terms of the opportunities that are being made for them. It's either the employment opportunities or business opportunities. But some countries have policies in place that accommodate people living with a disability. And also we have what you call environmental justice, which is also the major factor, whereby we have to look at the climate change. How can we ensure that we are very aware of the climate change, and what can we do to balance our lives and economy with the climate change? And the issue is not only about us scholars looking at this. The managing director of the International Monetary Fund, which is IMF, also said a lot about the inequality. If the IMF can see the challenge that we have and the economic disparities, yet they are not doing much to address these. In fact, for the matter of fact, IMF have a huge role that it has played to what is happening today when it comes to the global economic imbalances, because of the policies that they have and also because of the interest rates that they charge to countries that are borrowing money or those who are borrowing money. However, they realize that the increase in the inequality is hindered by a lot of things. There are trends in income and wealth distribution. As we are living in the world of trends, also the issue of the imbalances is affected by a lot of trends. Now, as you know that in the past, the economy have changed over time. For example, in 1980, the income levels and wealth distribution worldwide have changed. And the pool of people who have resources is becoming much smaller. And the pool of people who don't have money and who are living in poverty is becoming much, much bigger. So this is the change that is happening. As I indicated earlier on, that the 10% of the population that is controlling the world, as we have seen in the graph that I had. Continue. Okay. Okay. Oh. Okay, okay. Okay.
Boa tarde a todos. Desculpe, estamos um pouco atrasados, mas estamos aqui.
So sorry about that. I had to stop to allow our distinguished professors here, the giants in the issue of social justice and economic transfer. And I'm actually left with just one slide to talk about the topic that we are talking about. We're talking about the trends, and I only have 3 trends which are very dominant when it comes to social justice and income transfer. We have issues of technological change. The changes in the technology have a huge factor in our economy, in a global economy. The technological advancements sometimes take away people who are very skilled because of the new systems that are being used, such as the machines that are being used, which are able to do a lot of work easily and faster than sometimes human beings. And also the issue of unions, because some entrepreneurs or some companies don't want to allow employees to be unionized. So for them to cut the unions, they just use the machines, because the machines cannot be unionized. So the machines cannot be members of unions. They cannot, machines do not have rights. They do as they are programmed to do the work. So that alone is a problem. And also the business people do not have pay wages for the machines. But on the other hand, for human beings, they must pay the wages. And this is also aligned with the globalization, whereby the international trade and competition is very huge, which then cause a lot of challenges and a lot of problems, which lead to maybe job losses due to the economic imbalances and global competition, whereby services that are offered by specific countries can also be easily offered by others at a cheaper cost. So business people always look for profit. They always want to minimize spending and capitalize more on profit. So this becomes another factor. And lastly, as you can see, I'm not going word by word. I'm just highlighting some important facts about these growing income inequalities and the trends. And we have what you call domestic economic policies. Sometimes the policies can become a stumbling block to the economic transfer and social justice. Because if there's a policy in place, regardless of how the policy is affecting the people, but those who are applying that policy will say, this is a policy that is in place. So there's nothing wrong that they've done if the policy is properly implemented or properly applied. And also the domestic policies are not always good policies. They are not always represent the interest of the global community or the larger spectrum of the community, especially the 90%. Because remember earlier on, we spoke about the 10% and the 90%. The majority of us falls within the 90%, only a few that falls within the 10% of the rich people in the global community, especially per different countries, as we have seen the graph that I've shared with you. In conclusion, I have some, I have a picture, a group of pictures there which summarize what I spoke about. If you see at the first one, you see, just to narrate what is happening there. On the first one, you see there are 3 people on the other side. There's one on one side. So this one person have more wage than the three. So it depends on the economy. If you are rich, you get more respect, you get more power. You are more powerful than those who are not rich. And this is not how it's supposed to be. Because as human beings, we are all the same. We are breathing the same air. We are all the same, but the economy dictates how you are being treated by the global community. And the second one tells us that you must all work together. If we are working together, then there can be a balance. You can see there's a balance there. There's no side that carries more weight or less weight because people are working together. This is what you want to see in the global community to ensure that no one is less privileged, and no one is less advantaged, and no one is less respected. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Zamu. I would like to thanks here in the name of the director of the Institute of Economy of Unicamp, Professor Célio Iratuca, for the speakers. Such honor for us to receive you here in this activity. And I would like to present briefly Professor Philip van Parijs here from Belgium. He's a professor at the Faculty of Economic, Political, and Social Science at the Catholic University of Louvain, where he has held the Hoover Chair in Economic and Social Ethics Science since its creation in 1991. He also has been a visiting professor at Harvard University since 2004, and at the KU Leuven, I don't know if you pronounce it, Institute of Philosophy since 2006. He is one of the founders of the now called Basic Income Earth Network, BN, of which he is president. He also coordinates the Ethics Forum of the Belgian University Foundation. He is a member of the Royal Belgian Academy of Science, the Royal Belgian Academy of Arts, the International Institute of Philosophy, the European Academy and Arts of Science, and the British Academy. In 2001, he received the Fracke, is that correct? More or less, Belgian most prestigious science award. Thank you very much for your presence. And I also would like to thank Professor and former senator for the Workers' Party of Brazil, Partido dos Trabalhadores, Professor Eduardo Matarazzo Suplicy, who is a professor of economics at FGV, Faculdade Getúlio Vargas, Fundação Getúlio Vargas, and the most prominent activist for universal basic income in Brazil, having published several books and articles on the subject, in addition to being the author of the Basic Citizen Income Law approved by the Brazilian Congress in 2004, but not fully realized. Yeah. And I would like also to thank our colleague here, Leandro Moura Ferreira. He is a researcher at the Fluminense Federal University, Universidade Federal Fluminense, no Rio de Janeiro, holds a doctorate from the Institute of Economic of Unicamp. And is the current president of the Brazilian Basic Income Network, the BN, in Brazil. Yes. The idea now is I give the speech for Professor Van Parijs, after for Professor Suplicy, and then we open to the commenters, the comments for Leandro, and after that we open for the audience. Okay? Thanks. Please.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. So I'll talk briefly, if only because we arrived so late, so as not to exaggerate in the time we take from you. So what, given the title given to this workshop, to this meeting, I thought it would be good to submit to you a little reflection about the relationship between social justice and income transfers, and that will lead up. That will lead up. So I'll repeat what I'm going to do. So I'll reflect with you about the relationship between distributive justice and income transfers. I mean, clearly there is a relationship, but isn't the relationship more complicated than it seems? That's one. And this will lead up to one particular way of looking at the justification for non-conditional basic income. So there are many ways of presenting that, but looking at it from the angle of this relationship between social justice and income transfers can be illuminating. I'll have 4 points. In each case, in order to to try to avoid one frequent confusion. First point is about the relationship between social justice and distributive justice, and that is about the distributive understood as the just distribution of material advantages. Social justice does not reduce to that. There is also something which a number of philosophers have emphasized, particularly in recent years, in the last 2 decades or so, which is what they call relational equality, which is a matter of treating each other with respect. It's a matter of equal dignity, that it may have some connection, some factual connection with the distribution of income, but is not reducible to it. For example, we had this morning also a panel in São Paulo with someone from India, Sarah Davala, who mentioned this continuing discrimination and differential treatment between the various castes. So if, for example, if people from different castes don't want to share the same pavements, the same sidewalks, so if one from an upper caste gets out of the pavement in order to avoid a Dalit, someone from a lower caste, an untouchable, or if it's the other way around, an untouchable who says, oh, I can't stay, I must give way to this other person. This is an absence, may be contingently related to material inequalities, but there is something irreducible. It's not treating each other as equals. For example, this relational equality can also be promoted if all people of all social groups share the same hospitals. If there's not a hospital for the rich, which tends to be the case, of course, in this country, and then another hospital for the poor, that there is not one way of moving about in a city for the poor, which is public transport, and another one for the rich, taking taxis, that there is not some schools that are just looked down upon by the rich and reserved for the poor, and some for the rich. So this idea of mixing, of finding each other in the same spaces, the same institutions, and they're treating each other with respect, is an aspect of social justice that is irreducible to the question of the distribution of material resources, of distributive justice as it's usually understood. That's my first point. The second point is that the just distribution of material advantages is not only a matter of just distribution of income, that is, of private purchasing power. Equally important, in some contexts even more important, is the distribution of some environmental goods. That is about, for example, the quality of air, the absence of acoustic pollution, of noise, the presence of parks, of public parks and public greens. All these are, of course, collective goods. It's irreducible to the purchasing power that is provided by an income. But of course, distribution of parks, distribution of the quality of air, the distribution of noise in a city is also part of the just or unjust distribution of material resources. Environmental goods, but also, of course, public services. That is, you can reduce the inequality in material resources by providing better public transport that are usable by the people who don't have a private means of transport. Also, the quality of healthcare, the quality of childcare, etc. All these are public services that are as important for the just distribution of material resources, for distributive justice, as the distribution of private income is, of private purchasing power. That was my second point. Third point, the just distribution of income, even if you focus just on income, it's not only a matter of just distribution, a matter of distribution of income between households. Most of the time, the degree of inequality in a country, so when Brazil, for example, is ranked the 9th or sometimes the 13th country in terms of the level of inequality in the world, this is always on the basis of statistics relating to the inequality between households. Similarly, poverty rates in various countries are calculated, are assessed in terms of at the level of households. But there can also be injustice, distributive injustice within the households. And so it's very important to think about the distribution of income, of purchasing power at the individual level. Very often, this distribution of purchasing power and therefore also of bargaining power is very unequal between the adult members of the same household. And so it's important to look inside the household if you want to have a plausible, defensible conception of distributive justice. One shouldn't confine oneself to the level of the households. That's my third point. Now I turn to the fourth point, which is the more difficult one and on which I'll spend a bit more time than on the previous ones. But I repeat what the 3 steps so far. 1, social justice is not only about the distribution of material resources, it's also a matter of equal respect, equal dignity. 2, even the just distribution of material resources is not only a matter of distribution of income, it's also a matter of distribution of environmental groups and public services. 3, even the just distribution of income is not only a matter of distribution between households, but a matter of distribution between individuals, including within the household. And then finally, 4th, a just distribution of income is also affected by how you distribute that income, on the design of the transfer mechanism, of the income transfer mechanism. And that's, so I'll try to explain that by as follows. Suppose you adopt, in my view, a plausible conception of justice, which says that justice doesn't require strict equality. It doesn't require either the maximization of the total of income or material advantages, but justice must be thought about in terms of sustainable maximin. You are economists, you've already heard about maximin in various contexts, not least in game theory, but here it's simply understood as follows. It says, well, justice is not a matter of maximizing the aggregate, it's not a matter of minimizing inequality, it's a matter of making the situation of the worst off as well as is sustainable, as good as it's sustainable. As you maximize the minimum, you maximin. So suppose you say, well, let's restrict on income between individuals, and you have that conception of justice, maximize the minimum income. There are at least two ways in which you can think of achieving or pursuing this objective. One consists in saying, well, let's introduce the Bolsa Familia, something like that. So you focus on the poor by supplementing their income. And then you go far beyond the Bolsa Familia by increasing the level of guaranteed income and by topping up the income of people whose income is lower than the threshold. So one way of pursuing the objective of maximum income consists in saying, well, let's maximize the level of the Bolsa Familia. Let's suppose it's distributed at the level of the individuals, not at the level of the incomes. Okay, that would be strategy number one in order to achieve distributive justice, understood as the maximizing of income. Okay, but then you have another strategy which consists in saying, no, that's not the way we should do it. The way we should do it is the way in which our societies mainly provide incomes to people, that is through work. So what do you do then? You subsidize earnings, and that is the wages of people, and you try to make, you require people to work full-time, perhaps 50 hours a week, so as to maximize the minimum, and then you subsidize work or low-paid work so that the lowest net wages are very high. And the subsidizing can take an explicit form, the form of a wage subsidy, a top-up on the wages of the people who are at the bottom of the wage scale, but can also take indirect forms, for example, by saying all full-time workers can have free access to public transport, or all full-time workers can have free childcare. So there can be many other ways of subsidizing full-time work. So you have these two strategies, one which consists in saying, well, Bolsa Familia at the highest sustainable level, which is much higher than the present level, and the other one says, we are going to get people into full employment and then subsidize so that so as to maximize so that the net wage of the people with the lowest net wage would be as high as is sustainable. Now, there is a fundamental defect in each of these two strategies. The first big defect with the first strategy is that, of course, the higher you are going to lift this Bolsa Familia, the more people will be stuck in a poverty trap. That is why, well, you get, if you earn, say, take even 1,000 reais per month, and on the labor market, and the Bolsa Familia has been lifted to 2,000 reais. Okay, well, you have no interest in taking that job, because whether you take the job or not, your income will be lifted by the Bolsa Familia to 2,000 to 2,000 reais. What does that mean? That means that unavoidably, a large number of people will be trapped in unemployment because many people won't have the skills, won't have the productivity that enables them to get an income that would pay more than these 2,000 reais in my example. So that's a major defect to the extent that you attach importance not only to income, but also to access to employment, to a meaningful job. And so a large portion of the population will be excluded from the labor market. That's the defect of the first of the two strategies. What's the defect of the other strategy? Is that it only considers the dimension of income in material advantages. It ignores completely free time. So even a single parent would need to work these 50 hours and then be subsidized, etc. But it would be, you would create a situation for many people of extreme time poverty. Right? You can be income poor, but you can also be time poor, where you have no time for your children, no time for yourself, no time just to recover, just for because all these subsidies are limited to people who are full-time. And so it's useful to see these two contrasting perspectives of distributive justice through transfers. One that says a guaranteed income irrespective of work, but it traps many people in unemployment. The other one doesn't do so, it gets people into work, but it ignores the importance of free time. Is there an alternative? Yes, and that's where, as I promised, I come to basic income, because what the universal basic income does, and including at the highest sustainable level, and that's what we have to compare, is solve at the same time these two defects. Why? Because unlike the Bolsa Familia, a universal basic income is universal. Universal, that means you keep it if you start working. You are not trapped in a situation of unemployment, because if you accept a job and that pays even a low amount, it's added to your benefit. You don't lose your benefit. And that's the key difference. Because it's universal, it doesn't have the defect of Bolsa Familia and other guaranteed system. But at the same time, it solves the problem of the second strategy, because it is given obligation-free. That is, it's not restricted to people who work, let alone work full-time. It's not restricted to people who make themselves available for full-time work, and it's not restricted to to the people who apply for jobs or who don't give up jobs voluntarily. So, but it's given to everyone, which enables people to work part-time far more easily, to interrupt their working career. This may have all sorts of advantages, in particular in the context of the technological context we know, because of the complementarity between universal basic income and lifelong learning, which is absolutely essential in order to adjust to the technological changes. So that's one way, then, and that leads in fact to my own conception of distributive justice, which I developed in a book entitled Real Freedom for All, which I published many years ago, 30 years ago now, and where I hold a view with some qualifications into which I'm not going to go, where I say, well, what's just distribution? Well, it's a distribution. It's a set of institutions that lift the level of an unconditional basic income as highly as is sustainable. With, among the qualifications, one important qualification is that part of this basic income can be given in kind rather than in cash, and in particular in the form of a free healthcare package, and in the form of free education, free compulsory education up to a certain level, and some environmental goods. This can be considered as a sort of universal basic income in kind, and so, but part of it would also needed to be given in cash. And so, and the whole thing needs to be, for a society to be just, this needs to be lifted at the highest, up to the highest sustainable level. So that's my sort of what my conclusion, as it were, of this short discussion of the relationship between social justice and income transfer, and so insisting on the fact that one, there is also this aspect of relational equality, and basic income, partly because it's given unconditionally, contributes to this relational equality, as opposed to a system that is focusing on the poor and that quickly appears as a form of charity, demeaning, humiliating charity for the poor. And so, my first point was social justice is not only distributive justice, but also relational equality. Two, distributive justice is not only a matter of distribution of income, but also of environmental goods and public services. Three, distributive justice is not only at the level of households, but also at the level of individuals. And finally, distributive justice must take into account both the income aspect and the access to a job and the access to leisure. And if you want to do all of this together, what you need is an unconditional basic income. That's what I wanted to submit to your discussion.
Thank you very much, Professor Van Paris. Now I give the word for Senador Suplicy. I think this is working here.
Muito obrigado, professor Marcelo Manzano. Me sinto honrado de estar participando aqui do Café em Pesquisa, do Instituto de Economia, organizado pelo Centro de Estudos Sindicais e de Economia do Trabalho, e algo que foi criado pelo querido professor Márcio Postman. E para mim é uma satisfação, it's a pleasure to be with you here, Professor Zamukut Mandawa, Professor Zamu of the Durban University of Technology of South Africa. I would appreciate if you may tell me, I think I read recent news that South Africa might be one of the first nations to institute the citizens' basic income or universal basic income. And I think I read in the newspapers that, or in the news that several parties, political parties in South Africa now are sympathetic to the proposal of a citizens' basic income. Perhaps you may tell us more about that. For me, it's very important since I am the author of the law that we already have in Brazil to institute the citizens' basic income in that one day will be universal and unconditional. But if you allow me now, I will speak in Portuguese para meus queridas amigas e amigos da Unicamp. Eu estou muito feliz de ter sido convidado para estar aqui hoje, debatendo a justiça social, as transferências de renda, temas que tenho estudado ao lado de nomes tão importantes como do professor Marcelo Manzano, de Zamukuya Mandawa, do Leandro Ferreira, que muito cooperou comigo em meus trabalhos legislativos, e aquele que considero o meu maior amigo no planeta Terra, que é justamente o professor Felipe Van Paris, com quem eu tanto aprendi. A justiça social e a transferência de renda são conceitos inteiramente ligados, com um longo histórico de reflexão filosófica que acompanha a própria história da humanidade. Seria minha sacola aqui, separando os 3 livros que eu vou ter. E se eu lhe perguntar, por favor, como é o seu nome? Sim. Mais alto? Nancy. Quando começou a proposta da renda básica universal, no seu conhecimento?
Do you understand? No.
Oh, when did the basic income, the universal basic income idea started? From what you know? Pardon? No idea. Well, 520 years before Christ, Master Confucius said in the Book of Explanations and Answers that uncertainty is even worse than poverty. And can anyone go out from his home except through the door? The name of my book is The Citizen's Income. The exit is through the door, just to say that it's a common sense idea, but we need to put into practice. 300 years before Christ, Aristotle, in his book about justice, he said that to attain political justice, it's necessary first to realize distributive justice, assuring that the distribution of goods and services must produce equality among the people, and giving in an unequal form to those who are unequal, so as to turn them equal. Além disso, a necessidade de garantir a todos o sustento de suas necessidades básicas é um princípio também encontrado em diversos textos religiosos. No Antigo Testamento, a palavra mais citada é tzedakah, me ensinou o rabino Henry Sobel, que em hebraico significa justiça social ou justiça na sociedade, que era o grande anseio tanto do povo judeu como do povo palestino. Já na literatura de Hadith, Omar, o segundo dos 4 califas que sucederam ao profeta Maomé, ele aconselha que aqueles abençoados com riqueza abundante devem reservar uma porção para aqueles que possuem pouco ou nada. Se formos a Dalai Lama em uma ética para o novo milênio, ele afirma que uma vida luxuosa levada por alguns seres humanos seria admissível se toda a humanidade tivesse o suficiente para satisfazer as suas necessidades básicas e um pouco mais. Esse princípio fundamental da justiça distributiva é central para a discussão das transferências de renda. Nossa sociedade é marcada por profundas disparidades sociais e econômicas que limitam a possibilidade de cada um de viver com dignidade e liberdade real. Enquanto alguns vivem com tanta fartura e abundância, a maioria enfrenta dificuldades diárias para suprir suas necessidades básicas. E é nesse contexto que os programas de transferência de renda surgem como um dos instrumentos mais eficazes para alterar essa situação, promovendo que aqueles que mais têm contribuam para garantir o mínimo aos mais necessitados. Os mecanismos de transferência de renda, como o Bolsa Família, operam num princípio simples, porém poderoso: redistribuir recursos dos mais abastados da sociedade para os mais vulneráveis. Como o professor Felipe Vampares tem afirmado, não é apenas um mero assistencialismo, mas sim um investimento em capital humano. É um meio de dar aos mais vulneráveis uma chance de viver com dignidade e até mesmo de se capacitar para que no futuro possam ascender economicamente. No entanto, há várias formas de se redistribuir a renda, e eu estou persuadido de que a melhor delas é por meio da renda básica de cidadania e universal e incondicional. E conforme a Lei 10.835, aprovada por todos os partidos no Congresso Nacional e sancionada pelo presidente Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, em maravilhosa cerimônia, em 8 de janeiro de 2004, portanto, há 21 anos, a renda básica de cidadania refere-se ao direito de todos os brasileiros residentes no país e até dos estrangeiros aqui residentes há 5 anos ou mais, de receber anualmente, se não mensalmente, um benefício monetário de igual valor para todos, suficiente para atender às despesas mínimas de cada pessoa, independentemente de sua origem, raça, sexo, idade, condição civil ou mesmo socioeconômica. Mas até os mais ricos vão receber? Sim, mas estes serão os que mais contribuirão para o pagamento para todo o restante da sociedade. Eles vão pagar para si e para todos os demais. Infelizmente, sabemos que ao focar apenas no grupo de extremamente pobres, que hoje recebe até R$ 218 por mês, e exigir comprovações de renda e atualizações periódicas no cadastro único, o Bolsa Família deixa de fora milhões de pessoas vulneráveis que podem enfrentar dificuldades para manter seus cadastros atualizados, como as pessoas em situação de rua ou que estão fora do critério de exigibilidade, embora ainda enfrentem dificuldades para se manter. Esse problema e tantos serão resolvidos por uma renda básica universal e incondicional, como temos proposto. Permitam-me dizer das suas vantagens. Primeiro, o professor Vampares já explicou um pouco, mas eu vou aqui ressaltar. Eliminamos toda a burocracia em se ter que saber quanto cada pessoa ganha no mercado formal, na carteira de trabalho assinado, ou informal, qualquer atividade que façamos. Se uma mãe toma conta das crianças da vizinha, recebe um trocado no dia seguinte, não precisa declarar. Isso não só resolve o problema da exclusão, como também diminui em muito os custos administrativos do programa, permitindo que ainda mais recursos sejam investidos naquilo que realmente importa, a promoção da liberdade e dignidade humanas. Segundo, eliminamos qualquer estigma ou sentimento de vergonha da pessoa precisar dizer: olha, eu só recebo tanto, por isso mereço tal complemento. Eliminamos o fenômeno da dependência que ocorre quando uma pessoa precisa decidir se aceita ou não uma oportunidade de trabalho, mas se aceitar e aumentar a sua renda, e daí vem o governo e retira os benefícios que ele estava recebendo, isso cria uma situação em que trabalhar pode deixar o cidadão em situação mais difícil, e então muitas vezes desistem ou recusam e entram na armadilha do desemprego ou da pobreza. Quarto, a Constituição brasileira assegura o direito à propriedade privada, o que significa que os donos de indústrias, fazendas, bancos, imóveis, títulos financeiros podem receber os benefícios desses ativos sem qualquer condicionalidade. Se os mais ricos podem receber esse benefício sem qualquer exigência, por que não estender a todas as pessoas, ricas ou pobres, o direito de participar pelo menos um pouco da riqueza comum da nação? Mas qual é a principal e maior vantagem da renda básica de cidadania? Você quer me falar, por favor? Diga o seu nome. Qual é a maior vantagem? Justiça social, mas, conforme nos diz Amartya Sen, em Desenvolvimento como Liberdade, desenvolvimento, se for para valer, deve significar maior grau de liberdade para todos na sociedade. Ele conta um episódio que ocorreu quando ele tinha 10 anos de idade. Morava em Dhaka, hoje Bangladesh, capital de Bangladesh, mas era a Índia na época. Seu pai era um bom professor e ele morava numa boa casa. Certo dia, aos 10 anos de idade, algo assim, brincando no jardim da sua casa, eis que de repente entrou um homem gritando por socorro, esfaqueado nas costas. E ele então chamou por seu pai, que logo veio, acompanhou seu pai, levando aquele homem para o hospital. No caminho, Kadermi, aquele senhor, disse: bem que minha mulher tinha me avisado para não vir a este bairro tão perigoso, caracterizado por lutas étnicas, mas eu não tive outra alternativa senão aqui encontrar o trabalho que pudesse dar o sustento da minha família. Mas ao chegarem no hospital, Kadermi teve uma forte hemorragia e veio a falecer, conclui Amartya Sen. Tipicamente, este homem não tinha liberdade real, precisou colocar a sua saúde e vida em risco para conseguir um trabalho que pudesse dar o sustento da sua família. Ora, certo dia esteve no meu gabinete uma freira de uma ordem italiana de uns 2 séculos, dedicada às prostitutas, e junto com uma ex-prostituta vieram me convidar para conversar com diversas delas lá no Parque da Luz, em São Paulo. E eu fui lá e tomei um chá com elas na casa de chá e ouvi as histórias delas, uma delas dizendo: well, I couldn't give money, I couldn't give food to my kids, so I decided to sell my body here in the park. Eu não tinha dinheiro para dar de comida para meus filhos, minhas crianças, então vim vender o meu corpo aqui no Parque da Luz. Ou para aquele jovem que, às vezes, não tendo alternativa para ajudar no orçamento da sua família, resolve se tornar um aviãozinho da quadrilha de narcotraficantes, como o personagem do meu amigo Mano Brown, do Homem na Estrada, que recomeça o seu caminho, que é a sua realidade que foi perdida, subtraída, sua liberdade, sua dignidade, e quer dizer a si mesmo que se recuperou e vai dizer ao crime: nunca mais. O dia que houver uma renda básica para esse rapaz ou para aquela mãe, essas pessoas vão ganhar o direito de dizer: não, agora eu não preciso aceitar essa única alternativa que me surge pela frente, mas que vai ferir a minha dignidade, a minha liberdade. Agora, graças à renda básica para mim e cada membro da minha família, Eu posso aguardar um tempo, quem sabe fazer um curso com o professor Felipe, o professor Zamo, aqui na minha cidade, até que surja uma oportunidade mais de acordo com a minha vocação, com a minha vontade. É nesse sentido, pois, que a renda básica de cidadania vai elevar o grau de dignidade e liberdade para todos. Então, a renda básica constitui também um instrumento para promover maior estabilidade e progresso na sociedade. Ao erradicar a pobreza extrema, amortecer os choques de desigualdade, nós poderemos construir uma sociedade com muito maior grau de fraternidade e paz, e assim atender às recomendações deste grande homem que nos deixou há pouco mais de um mês, o Papa Francisco. Conhecem todos vocês essas recomendações do Papa Francisco? Vamos sonhar juntos o caminho para um futuro melhor? Alguém aqui já leu este livro? Na página 143, vocês vão poder ler o seguinte: reconhecer o valor do trabalho não remunerado para a sociedade é vital para repensarmos o mundo pós-pandemia. Por isso, acredito que seja a hora de explorar conceitos como o da renda básica universal. A renda básica universal poderia redefinir as relações no mercado laboral, garantindo às pessoas a dignidade de rejeitar condições de trabalho que as aprisionam na pobreza. Daria aos indivíduos a segurança básica de que precisam, eliminando o estigma do seguro-desemprego, e facilitaria a mudança de um trabalho para outro, como cada vez mais os imperativos tecnológicos no mundo trabalhista exigem. Políticas como essa também podem ajudar as pessoas a combinar tempo dedicado a trabalho remunerado com tempo para a comunidade. Com o mesmo objetivo, é bem possível que seja também hora de considerar uma redução no horário de trabalho, com ajuste salarial correspondente, o que, paradoxalmente, pode aumentar a produtividade. Trabalhar menos para que mais gente tenha acesso ao mercado de trabalho e um aspecto do tipo de pensamento que precisamos explorar com certa urgência. Ao pôr a restauração da dignidade dos nossos povos como objetivos centrais do mundo pós-pandemia, fazemos com que a dignidade de todos seja o que move nossas ações. Garantir um mundo em que a dignidade seja valorizada e respeitada por meio de ações concretas não é apenas um sonho, mas o caminho para um futuro melhor. One of the speeches that I consider very good is that of Nelson Mandela during the 100th commemoration of 100 years of President Nelson Mandela. Barack Obama, what? On the 100th birthday of Nelson Mandela, and President Barack Obama was there and made a beautiful speech. Perhaps you were there, no? Mm-hmm. No, but and then you must see the video. It's easy. Todos podem ver o vídeo. Barack Obama, 100 anos de Nelson Mandela. At a certain point, he said, now that there is so much progress with the artificial intelligence, many cars that are going on the streets without any chauffeur. the progress of technology and so many, and he quote other things. He says, now it is time to explore new ideas such as the universal basic income. Did you know that he said so? Did you know the speech of Barack Obama?
Not that one, but I've listened to a lot of speeches where
Okay.
he's advocating.
But this is a very special speech that will help in your cause in South Africa, ok? Bem, então, minhas queridas e meus queridos, eu convido todos vocês a abraçarem a causa, ainda mais muitos aqui são estudantes de economia ou de áreas da política, da sociologia, assistência social e tudo, mas me coloco à disposição de ajudá-los, de vir mais aqui debater com vocês, mas quero estimulá-los a realizar estudos, teses de mestrado, de doutoramento, sobre o tema de como a renda básica universal, que já é lei no Brasil, só falta implementá-la. Eu sugeri, o presidente Lula aceitou a formação de um grupo de trabalho que está estudando os passos de como o Bolsa Família vai se tornar cada vez mais a renda básica incondicional para toda a população brasileira. Então, o presidente Lula visitando aqui a Unicamp, podem perguntar a ele quando é que vai ficar pronta a renda básica universal. Está combinado? É a minha proposta para vocês. Muito obrigado a todos.
Muito obrigado, Suplicy. Agradeço muito. E não sei se você vai cantar uma musiquinha, mas, Suplicy, temos essa... Esqueci de anunciar, né? Professor Suplicy also is a singer. But, Leandro, por favor, passo para os seus comentários. Professor Leandro will be making here some comments. Thanks.
Obrigado, Manzano. Obrigado, Zamu. Obrigado, Felipe e Suplicy. Para mim é uma honra estar aqui. O Manzano falou que eu tenho doutorado, mas eu estou no doutorado aqui no Instituto. So I'm currently doing my PhD research here on the Universal Basic Income. Last semester I had the chance to take the course of Professor Marcelo Manzano on social policy. It was shared with Mariana, that is also here. And they asked me, Philippe, to hold a seminar on your book with Yannick. And it was a session about universal basic income, of course. And I was happy that I got a very good point that was also in your speech on the Maximin approach to what should income transfers take in consideration, including in those continuous rationalization process towards universal basic income. So I invite you all to know Felipe Vampari's books, which is one of the best guides. This one here that Suplicy just gave me. Esse é o livro que está em português, inclusive, Felipe Vampares e Yannick van der Bord. Renda básica, uma proposta radical para uma sociedade livre e economia sã. Eu sei que tem aqui na biblioteca do Instituto e é certamente um guia, né? Tem capítulos muito interessantes que tratam, por exemplo, de processos contínuos em política social. Eu recomendaria, I would recommend, Philip, there's a session in the book called Transferências de Renda de Roosevelt a Lula, from Roosevelt to Lula's Bolsa Família. There's a session here, so it's very good and approaches Brazil's social policy from a perspective of someone that follows the country for so long now. But I have a question for you on the tradition of this institute, which is to research development and under a perspective of economics that is not the mainstream economics. And this is, we even have here studies on structuralism that led us to create the idea of the school of competence of thinking on economics, and development is in the center of it. And sometimes I feel like the universal basic income movement around the world has done much about the debate on justice, on equality, on freedom. But I feel like we are distanced from the debates on development as they are on these days. So I feel like the universal basic income debate is separated from the debates on development itself. So it is, of course, an imperative for everyone to talk about environmental change. And I know that everybody in the movement is kind to it. It's not like something new, but I feel like we have a theory of equality, a theory of justice, a theory of freedom around the basic income ecosystem, but we don't have a theory of development. So my I have to take this opportunity, even for my own understandings and research challenges that I have ahead of me. So that's what I would like you to approach. But if you want to comment also on the questions that I have for Zemu, I would appreciate it. And that is, Zemu, I feel like we have gave up too early on the welfare state debate. I think that it is something that it is, of course, given in terms of history, in terms of this tradition and the actual state of it in Europe right now. But we have never finished the construction of the welfare states in Brazil, in Africa, in Latin America. It feels like an unfinished job. So I would like you, Zemu, to talk a little about both from the South Africa perspective, but also from the whole continent that you are from, on the welfare state system, and how this is a challenge or not, or whether this is a challenge or not. Should we still pursue some of the ideas that are part of the foundations of the welfare state? Because I feel like we should not give up on that without some deeper thinking, or even some replacement for that in terms of what we propose. And in that case, I'm thinking not only about the approaches, the classic approaches like those from Guston, Spin, Anderson, but also how to create a welfare state system that is just, back to the justice debate, that is just for our countries. And I'll give you an example, because everybody talks about Bolsa Familia a lot, and Suplicy and I and many others, we have been struggling in recent years in Brazil, not only to keep making Bolsa Familia better, but also to rationalize it, other policies that are actually creating more inequality. And I'll give you an example. We have a tax deduction for people with children in Brazil if they pay their taxes from their payroll. So it's a deduction that rich people that actually have formal jobs have the right to have if they have young children, up, not only young children, but up to 21 years. So I have a 8-year son, and I have a deduction, and I do pay 27% of taxes, which is the maximum rate here in Brazil, which is applied to a certain threshold that is not as much, but just a few people pay it. And this tax deduction makes me get for my 8-year-old son more than a mother in Bolsa Familia gets for her 8-year-old son. So it means that I do have a transfer, actual transfer, even if you apply the 27% burden to this deduction, that is in net terms, in net value, more than the mother for each of their children in Bolsa Família. So there are a lot of inequalities also to the approach of social policy, and especially the social policy that is very reliant on the formal job market, right? And I've been debating this also with Professor Manzano every time we have the chance, how to decouple social protection and in labor. No? So this is a debate here. So those are the questions for you both. And I have a more provocative question for Suplicy, which is that we all know that the Bolsa Família budget, o orçamento do Bolsa Família cresceu muito nos últimos anos. E muitas pessoas foram incorporadas ao programa Bolsa Família como beneficiárias. Mas muitas pessoas neste governo Lula também foram desligadas do Bolsa Família. Em uma taxa líquida, né? Tem mais pessoas desligadas do que ligadas ao Bolsa Família no governo Lula. 3. Né? Então, a minha pergunta é, né, para quem não sabe, eu trabalhei muitos anos com o Suplicy e eu pude visitar com ele mais de 200 municípios no estado de São Paulo. Né? Então, toda vez que eu ia para uma cidade, eu olhava para o cadastro único da cidade, pegava o número de pessoas que estavam dentro de um patamar de renda e o número de beneficiários do Bolsa Família naquela cidade. E aí, quando ele chegava no município, ele apresentava para o prefeito o desafio de encontrar as pessoas que ainda não estavam no Bolsa Família para que elas fossem inscritas no programa federal, porque é uma responsabilidade municipal do prefeito inscrever as pessoas, aquela coisa do CRAS, do cadastro único e tal. E aí a pessoa passaria a receber o benefício do Bolsa Família. Se nós fizéssemos isso hoje, Suplicy, mesmo com o esforço local dos prefeitos, o que eles veriam seria uma redução do número de beneficiários, né? Por conta de toda a economia política do país que está apertada em função do histórico do Bolsonaro, do poder econômico que de fato existe, né? Mas o Bolsa Família, ele é algo que é muito bem visto, mesmo sendo do jeito que é, né? Nem crescendo para se tornar uma renda básica, ele é muito bem visto. E o governo está perdendo a oportunidade de fazer com que ele cresça, ao invés de diminuir, né? Fazendo com um discurso de que a gente está, na verdade, tendo que tirar a gente ao invés de incluir. So my question for Eduardo is, in net terms, we do have a reduction in beneficiaries in Bolsa Família to this Lula's administration. So I think that Bolsa Família is too good and too well considered by the Brazilian population, and we should not skip the opportunity to make it as wide as possible instead of shrinking it because under the economic pressure that really exists. But we have like a budget of 170 billion reais for Bolsa Família right now, and the government wants to save up like 4 billions by shrinking Bolsa Família. That's nothing. That's not what unbalances the fiscal budget in Brazil. So my question to Eduardo, a little more provocative, is how do you feel like that we are still moving toward universal basic income with this scenario for Bolsa Família, which I take freedom to ask you. Então, tomo a minha liberdade aqui de conhecer muito bem o trabalho do Suplicy e dos governos Lula a respeito disso para fazer essa pergunta.
Muito obrigado, Leandro. Thank you. I would like to remember something that is important to say here today, that Campinas, the city of Campinas, was the first city in Brazil with a program of income transfers, together with Porto Alegre, I don't.
Campinas e o
Brasília.
Distrito Federal.
Distrito Federal, Brasília. Yeah, in
E depois
1995,
Ribeirão
yeah.
Preto.
depois Ribeirão Preto.
In January 1995,
95, yeah.
both Cristóvão Buarque em Distrito Federal e José Roberto Magalhães Teixeira em Campinas, ambos iniciaram programas de garantia de renda mínima associados às oportunidades de educação. Os pais que não tinham renda até certo montante passaram a ter direito de uma garantia de renda desde que as suas crianças, adolescentes, estivessem frequentando a escola.
Exatamente. Muito bem. Well, let's start here. Could be in the order of the cities, please.
Okay. So I'll respond briefly and perhaps just saying a word first on the questions that were primarily addressed to you. So what you mentioned, Leandro, is this thing that exists in a large number of countries, which is a tax reduction. It can take different forms for the people who have a taxable income. Their tax is reduced depending on the number of children they have, sometimes depending on the age of the children. And I've always thought that in the context, I've thought for a long time, in a context like the Brazilian one, it would make sense to integrate the sort of child benefit aspect of the Bolsa Familia with the tax exemption or tax reduction aspect of the personal tax income system. If you integrate the two, you get something like a basic income for children, universal basic income for children. You have to look, indeed, as you suggested, about the relative levels, and to see also about the degree to which the Bolsa Familia is a child benefit system. And but I think there is a room for integrating that, and that prospect needs to be taken into account when discussing, as we talked about a couple of days ago. It has to be integrated with the idea of introducing some sort of child benefit at the level of the state of São Paulo as a universal. That's on one thing. Then two, I question the relationship between basic income and the degree of development of the welfare state. I'll remember for the whole of my life something that was once told me by a South African economist. And initially, when Bien was founded as a basic income European network, for me it was obvious that basic income was only relevant in the context of highly developed welfare states. And it is precisely the defects of these developed welfare states, and particularly the poverty trap that create, and the dependency trap that create, that motivated and justified the introduction of universal basic income. And but then South African economists once told me, Philippe, you are as arrogant as Karl Marx. Okay, what a compliment. And then why? Well, he said, Karl Marx, he thought that the socialist revolution could only happen in a highly developed industrial country. England, Germany, Belgium, some parts of France, and instead it happened in rural countries, really peasant countries like Russia and China. Well, similarly, he said, don't expect a basic income to be introduced in countries with a highly developed welfare state, but rather in countries like South Africa or like Brazil. And it's Eduardo's managing to get the slow path in January 2004 that really convinced me that the basic income European network could become a basic income Earth network, because the idea is indeed relevant in countries where I thought initially that it was not relevant, and this is further reinforced by and really re-emphasized by the current chair of Bian, who is an Indian and who restated even today how relevant basic income is in the Indian context. On the question that, the difficult question that was addressed to me by you, Leandro, the relationship between basic income and development. Well, first of all, this question has to be decomposed, and first is the relationship between basic income and growth. And there is an undeniable tension within the basic income movement, because some people say, look at these experiments, look how a basic income contributes to boosting the GDP, sort of activating economic activity, and there is a Keynesian multiplier effect and all that. Bravo, this is good for growth. And some other people say we are for degrowth. We think that in the current context, because of the economic challenges, climate change, etc., we should not grow. Our economy shouldn't grow, it should degrow, and the basic income is a tool for that because it will enable people to work less. So there is a clear tension there. Now, my own view on that, and it's related then to the notion of development as distinct from growth of GDP. My own view is first that we need the growth of GDP in many countries in the world, including Brazil or South Africa, and even more in other African countries. GDP needs to grow. We need more investment in order to do all sorts of things, public transport in big cities, and many, many things, improving the living conditions of people. We need growth. So is degrowth nonsense? No. What we need is a degrowth of consumption in wealthy countries, not necessarily of production in wealthy countries, because part of what is produced there, including immaterial goods, will need to be consumed in less developed countries because of the purchasing power that needs to be transferred to these countries. So degrowth makes sense as a degrowth of consumption, but not necessarily of production. And that means that people who say basic income is a good thing because we'll be able to relax and so on, I think it's important to have a more relaxed labor market and to have more possibilities of working part-time, etc. But we need an economy that remains productive. Being productive is not an insult. It is something which we need to do, and basic income can help in that respect. Does that mean that growth should be this objective growth of GDP or whatever is meant? Certainly not. And certainly, if you say the objective is the highest sustainable basic income, that's not the same as the highest sustainable GDP, per capita GDP or income per capita, because it means at the same time that you give more freedom to people and give them also freedom to be active outside of the sphere that is taken into account in GDP measures. Because whatever is done, and they can, within the household, caring for the children, caring for your neighbor, being active in order to try to improve the conditions in a favela, all this is not taken into account in the GDP, measuring the GDP of a country. And of course, the highest feasible basic income is meant to give people this freedom at the expense of a higher rate of growth, and therefore, and so that leads to, as you well know, and I'm sure all economists in Campinas know, that the notion of development has many definitions, but it certainly, as distinct from growth, it includes other aspects of life. So you have a sensory definition of what development means, etc., that are, of course, far better promoted by basic income policy than by many other alternatives, including the redistributive policies, which I mentioned before. And so, of course, basic income, yesterday in São Paulo, were asked, can basic income solve the problem of criminality? no, basic income cannot solve the problem. It can be a little marginal contribution, but similar development, of course, needs many, many policies, education being absolutely central for development. But basic income is certainly compatible with any sensible definition of development, but not with the current definition of what growth is. That is growth of GDP, even though some growth of GDP, some significant growth of GDP in many countries of the world is certainly absolutely essential for the sake of global justice.
Thank you. Yeah, Professor Zamo, please.
Thank you very much. I think I'll be very short because most of the questions were answered by Prof. Philip, and also most of the issues have been covered by Prof. Soplisi. So I think I will be very short. Well, I'll just try to I'll attempt to respond to two questions. The one is the issue of the welfare state, and secondly, the basic income in South Africa. So those are the two things that I think I will be talking about. Number one, the issue of the welfare state is relative to the political leadership. If you don't have leaders who have interest at heart to help the poor people on the ground to change their economic conditions, you will never realize a welfare state. So it's all about those who are in the leadership positions. There are countries that have done extremely well. I'll make an example of a country in Africa called Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso, at some point, they had a leader called Thomas Sankara. And that leader was a true revolutionary in Africa who really believed on ideas of the welfare state, not in talking, but in action. When he was the president of Burkina Faso, he did not have lived a flamboyant lifestyle where leaders of today are escorted by many bodyguards on expensive cars, and they also earn a lot of money as government officials. But with him, when he was a leader of Burkina Faso, he used a lot of his money, a salary in that matter, to transform the poorest of the poor society. And he also took away a lot of privileges that he had when he was a leader of Burkina Faso. As a result, he was not seen as a good leader by his peers, and in fact by many African leaders who thought his ideas are going to cause more problems for them because they had completely different ideas, whereby if you are a leader, you must be cherished, people must praise you, people must respect you, give you a high respect on the basis of being a leader, being in a position, regardless of your leadership capabilities, and also regardless of the things that you are doing for the people that you are leading. So I think at this point, he's the only leader that really had ideas of the welfare state or the social welfare state in action, and also in his ideas that he had. As a result, he did not survive. So in fact, what I'm saying is that it relies on the leaders. If leaders believe that they need to do things that will empower the people, then it can happen, because leaders take decisions, and decisions must be implemented by the government. With regards to what is currently happening in South Africa, we have transformed a lot when it comes to helping the unemployed and also helping the poorest people. We have social grants. The social grants are designed to help those who are unemployed, is designed to help those who are under the age of 18, who are not able to support themselves. So in other words, single parents, single mothers, or single fathers are supported by the government to help them support their kids. There is a free education in the basic education level, so in primary schools and in the secondary schools. But in higher education institutions, we have some financial schemes that are designed to help those who don't have money to study, which is in the form of the financial aid. So that money is designed to help those who are not able to pay for the school fees, for the university fees. At this point, there is a policy that is being under review, which is what you call basic income grant policy. It has been approved in various platforms, but it still has to serve on the public for public opinion or views before it can be approved as a policy or as an act, so that the government will be able to act upon that decision once the society give a blessing to the government to say, we really support this act or this policy. So this is what is currently happening in the country. I will not dwell much because I think colleagues will be able to give further details. Thanks.
Tenho a impressão de que já tinha colocado os meus. Eu posso responder qualquer pergunta aqui.
A pergunta do Leandro, se o senhor quiser comentar.
In fact, the number of families today, more than 20 million families, that means more than 55 million people. We will have an opportunity during the next week in Marica and Niterói, because the Minister Wellington Dias will participate in the 24th International Congress of BIAM, and so he's the best man to answer your question, Professor Leandro, because we will ask him. There are so many questions. For example, to what extent Marica, that has, it's a pioneer both in creating the social money that it is called Mumbuca, one Mumbuca, 1 real. It was 219 or 215. I spoke about the basic income in São Paulo, and the mayor of Maricá, Washington Quaqua, told me, I want to apply the basic income in Maricá. And so he started step by step. All families that received the Bolsa Família in January 2016 got 10 Mumbucas more. In January 2017, 20 Mumbucas more. In 2019, November, all persons, about 43,000 persons that were in families with the Bolsa Família, they started to receive 130 Mumbucas per month. And December 2023, first 93,000 people started to receive what was 230 reais per month, and then the Washington Quaqua, the mayor, said that many people there were irregularly enrolled in the program, and so now it's 71,000 people. But there is one question: to what extent Maricá will universalize or not what it is today, the basic income. It's a pioneer experience, and you are all invited to participate in the debate, in this discussion. You will be there, no? Yes, and so you will be a very important person there, explaining and exchanging ideas with ourselves. To what extent should Brazil go ahead and start the citizens' basic income in the form as so well argued by Philip Van Parijs and in all of his books, with whom I have learned a lot. Every day I learn with him. Okay. Thank you very much.
Obrigado, Senador Suplicy. Thank you. I would like to